Was it scary whenever you quit your job?
Oh, it still is, but it gives you a sense of urgency. And until you put yourself in a situation and you just pull the trigger and go for it, you're never going to grow. I think that was the biggest thing that I felt the last couple of years in my job was I felt a lack of growth. You can't grow unless you put yourself in the situation to grow.
I went through the same thing, is that those last couple days, there were tons of teachers who came up and said, like, if I only could do what you're doing, I would be out of here 10 years ago. And then there's so many teachers wanted to leave. Lots of teachers said, I only, quote unquote, have 10, 15 years left, and then I could be on the top teacher step, or then I get to retire. It's like, yeah, then you're basically dead. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Rising Father Podcast. I'm Chris Rodak. I've got Aaron Jacobs with me. Aaron is an interesting guy. He's an awesome guy. And why is he interesting? Because he recently quit his teaching job. He was a band director like me, and he taught high school band, middle school band also, right, Aaron?
Yep.
Yeah,
all the things.
Very successful band director, and decided he wanted to move on, and reached out to me, and I've been helping him build a coaching program, an amazing program that he's going to be wildly successful at, where he's going to help other band directors get in the best shape of their life and get their shit together. Welcome, Aaron.
Thank you very much, Chris. It has been quite the journey the last 3 or 4 months. This is, if you would have talked to me a year ago, I was in my teaching job. I was all in. I thought I was going to be there another 20 years. And to think that a year later, I'm now going to be moving into this space, working towards building a platform where band directors can actually start to work to being elite athletes. We tend to be the kids that, and I haven't really said this in my content yet, but I think this is a line that I think I keep going back to in my head because this is my experience growing up. We were always the kids picked last in gym class growing up. And then, like, if you go back, and especially for me, like, I taught in the school that I went to. Like, I went back as an alumni of the same school I taught at, and like you relive that trauma a little bit. Like, you're the kid picked last in gym class, and then you're like second fiddle to the athletic department getting the facilities and all that. And like, I kind of got sick of that culture, and I realized that if that was to ever change, one, band directors actually need to be able to go in there and take charge and have enough discipline to live a life that commands the respect of people who are in athletics primarily. And I knew I couldn't do that while also trying to be a band director at the same time. That was just too much. And so, like, my purpose and my mission really evolved. And then I happened to find you, and I'd been following you for months. And then it was the first post I saw from you that said, I'm a former band director. And I was like, I knew there was a reason that, even though I'm not a father yet, there was a reason that I clicked follow with this guy. Mm-hmm. I knew it. And so that was the day that I DM'd you. That was 3 days after I quit my teaching job. And I said, oh yeah, this is it. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. And it just kind of clicked for me. And you said, hey, here's what we can do. Let's do it. And I said, let's go. I think that same night I was in.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, you dove in. You were ready to go from day one.
Yep.
And some guys dip their toes in. Some guys take a long time. But it seemed like you knew exactly what you wanted to do. Didn't spend 2 years thinking about it. Or maybe you did. Like, let's talk about that. How long has this been on your mind that you wanted to quit your job and move on?
I mean, I think pretty much since the first year I was in my job, and I know that's probably going to bother a lot of former families and students that had me, but I think it was just realizing, like, the amount of work it took for me to bring our program up to the level that it needed to be at to be respectable, to do what it really should have been doing all along. For various reasons it had fallen off and such. And it took everything out of me to do that. And I was like, I realized that I wanted to do other things with my life than band. I wanted to build a life outside of band. And I think that I started to do that my last 5 years. And I found a way to achieve a much better balance with the job my last 5 years. Like, COVID kind of did like a big reset for me. And that I fluctuated in both directions during COVID. And that's when I think I realized, like, I had a lot more to offer the world. I gained the most weight I've ever gained when we went to quarantine. And then I also got the fittest I ever did 6 months after we were able to go to gyms. And so ever since then, I've been absolutely on fire for advocating people to live healthier and how to do it. And it's simpler than people think. I mean, yes, it takes a lot of discipline, but it was that moment, like that halfway point where I realized, oh, I knew I always had something else out there that I could do that would be more, that would have a more positive effect on the world in general. And 2020 is when it hit me.
How long have you been band director?
So I've been a band director for 15 years. I started out in the Dayton schools. I was in Beaver Creek, which is one of the biggest school districts in Ohio. I taught at one of their middle schools for 3 years. I did 2 years of university teaching where I was a graduate assistant Wright State. I actually ran their basketball band. And that was actually a lot of fun. I actually enjoyed that because like the basketball teams were really good. The women's team actually made the NCAA tournament, won the conference while I was there. So that was a lot of fun. And then I was at Avon Schools near Cleveland for 10 years, where I was the head director at the high school program.
At Avon or any of the other schools, have you guys had any successes, any big triumphs that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, so when I first got to Avon, I mean, first of all, like the band enrollment in general had really fallen off. There was a point, like I think a year or two before I got there, they had gotten down to one concert band, and now as I've left the position, they now have 3 band classes at the high school. So we rebuilt the whole thing from the ground up. We've won numerous local events in our state, like first place grand championships. We've earned probably the most superior ratings at the state level in Ohio that we have in terms of having a streak in the program's history. We missed a year right before COVID and missed obviously COVID because nobody competed, but we did not have that level of consistency ever in our history. And then after COVID broke, we did 3 years in a row at the state level earning the superior ratings and sometimes earning all ones. And that was pretty unprecedented for us. In the concert band world, we played some of the most difficult music. We were able to play, my last concert, we played 2 pieces by Johann de May, which is, I mean, from the Lord of the Rings Symphony in my top group.
Yeah,
so
unbelievable pieces.
Yeah, we started out not even being close to that. And it was really cool to see the program grow and evolve. Obviously, more kids participated. Actually, our biggest year that we had, we went from like, I think there were 75 kids in the marching band my first year. We had 115 the year after COVID.
It's amazing.
So 5 years later, we'd increased the enrollment by more than 50%.
Mm-hmm. So very successful as a band director, but you said since I guess the first year, you felt like there was more out there for you. Am I saying that right?
Yeah, there was. Yeah, I just feel like the restrictiveness and how much time you have to spend doing the job in the public school, you are all in for that thing. And
so people don't understand that, right? Because being an elementary school gym teacher is different than being a high school band director with a successful marching band. So give us some examples for the people who have no idea. Like what's your schedule like? What does this require?
This is a perfect time to actually talk about that, Chris, because we are right. And it's funny that like most band directors
band camp season.
Exactly. Like a lot of the high school band they're going back right now. Like fall starts now. If you're a high school band director or you're involved with marching band, a lot of practices start up. Actually, I know the program I used to teach at Avon, they've had the drummers practicing already. They have leadership meetings next week, and they're bringing all the kids in the following week, and then the camp is like the week after that. So I mean, you get maybe 4 weeks off in the summer. I laugh every time people say that teachers get so much time off. It's hilarious. Like because even during the school year, like you're spending, if you're trying to give everything you can, like you're spending your weekends in the building, like doing stuff. You're grading playing tests. You're trying to give assessments. Like, I mean, all those things that factor into it, a lot of that stuff happens outside the school day. And like, yeah, I would say the actual planning side of being a band director, once you pick your literature, is actually pretty easy once you kind of know what you're doing. But it's all the extra time you have to spend around it that doesn't involve classroom time that really starts to add up if you are trying to, maximize the potential of your program.
Yeah, like the extracurricular, small paying positions that are in addition to your teaching job are the most time consuming.
They are. Yeah. Marching band, especially if your band competes, that's almost a 12-month a year thing. I would joke with the kids that I would say I would do marching band 11 months out of the year. Like the football season's 4 months, our competitive season's maybe 4 months, 4.5. But I'm thinking I give myself December to not think about it. And then January, like you're already having to plan the following year. Like it starts right up again. Mm-hmm. You don't really get a break from it.
Yeah, whenever I was a band director as well, and I did marching band until the first couple years of my son. I don't remember exactly when I quit, but I was one of the assistant directors. We weren't a competitive marching band, but it was they were very, very high level and successful at what they did. Mm-hmm. There was no break. It was school ended. Before the school year ended, marching band started, and it was like rookie nights and sectionals, and then summer band started, and it was 3-4 days a week for hours, and I would be driving to the school in the middle of the summer, spending my day there organizing the music library, and then we had 2 weeks of band camp, like an entire drive to a band camp for 24/7, and then we had something called pre-band camp, which was a band camp before band camp, and then there was 2 weeks off of nothing, and then you've got preschool year rehearsals. And then I was at school, and then we had I had the more normal 9 to 5 job, and then 2 after school 3-hour or 2-hour rehearsals. Then you have football games on Friday night. Then you have band festivals on Saturday, and then you get back from the football game at 11, 12 o'clock, and some parents don't pick their kids up till 1, 2 a.m.
Oh yeah,
and it's just like and my wife is like, "What is this?" And I'm at school waiting for some mom to get back from the grocery store so she can pick her kid up, and my baby boy is at home waiting for his dad. And I'm like, who am I really giving my life to? Is it my son and my family, or these kids? And it was at that point I said, I need to stop this, and I quit. But it is insanely, I think I added up my hourly wage the year before I quit. I added up my hourly wage, it was like 10 cents an hour or something I was getting. It's unbelievable.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and I had one of the highest paying supplementals in the district. Like, obviously, our head football coach was the top one. And even then, like, you do the amount of hours you actually have to put in, whether they're documented on your actual schedule you put out to families. There's all the planning and stuff that goes into it that you just, I never bothered to keep track of my hours because I just knew it was just ridiculous. And I knew if I looked at that number that you just came up with, like, I knew it would absolutely devastate me. So
yeah, and then you're only allowed to put in so many hours. It's like, well, put in your timesheet. It's like, okay, yeah, you can put in this many hours. It's like, well, what about the other hundreds of hours I put in? Yeah. So incredibly time consuming. To kind of like suck your life a little bit. What did that lifestyle at all contribute to? You said your health declined a little bit.
I think it did and it didn't. I mean, I was always searching for trying to be the most athletic I could be, because I knew that if I ever found a way to be actually fit, I knew it would help our band perform better. I knew that I would understand injury prevention when it came to marching band. I would understand how to warm the kids up better, how to move in a healthier way, and eating healthier too. I actually was really seeking to be like the best example I could be for them. Eventually, I think just the amount of years of going all in for the job is really what did it for me.
What do you mean?
So, I mean, after 10 years, I really didn't give myself much of a break. I mean, the cycle was I would finish like the spring stuff in May, like you said. We'd even have some marching band stuff. Some years we would do that in May. I'd go on vacation with like maybe my family for like a couple weeks, and then the second I got back, I was right back into it. So like in terms of having time to actually meditate and reflect, I was always go, 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 go. And I never, even holiday breaks, I never felt like I was really off the job.
Yeah.
Because of the nature of the pace of when you're on the job, there's always somebody needs you for something. There's always more to do, and you never feel like you're giving enough. And that, I think there's like a hustle culture among band directors where like you're made to feel like a certain way if you're not the person that's like, oh, I did this really cool thing and I held this leadership seminar for my kids, or I did this extra thing and this and that.
Yeah.
Like that is so popularized amongst band directors, and I really would love to change that. I think that some of those hours need to be recaptured for taking care of your personal health and being with your family. And I mean, there's a whole thing around, man, you talk about competitive marching band, like the requirements now to enter that activity are just stupid. The amount you have to spend on props, how long your show has to be, how much time it takes to put those shows together. It's just the biggest freaking time suck and money suck out of anything. It's why a lot of these top DCI groups now are folding, because even they can't maintain it.
Yeah, you get that. Every niche in culture has these weird little bubbles where you can just continually dive deeper and deeper and deeper. And then if you're on the outside, you don't know how crazy it gets whenever you go in there. And if you're listening to this, you're like, what the hell? We're talking about marching band? Yes. Yeah. There's these weird worlds out there where in the marching band world, people are very, very serious, very, very cultish, and dive in deep, and it's the only thing that matters. And a lot of times band directors I feel like their entire identity hinges on that position.
Yes.
And that's where you can get some of that opinionated, judgmental talk back and forth of, oh, well, you only put in 24 out of 24 hours a day for your band kids. I did 26 out of 24 hours a day. You must not care about them. And it's this really weird, toxic environment that I've witnessed in band directors.
Yes. And then on the other end, I don't know how many state conferences you went to in your state, but you go to the Ohio one, and the bars are just chock full of people just trying to drown their sorrows in alcohol.
Yes. No,
And-
our band every other year went to the PMEA state convention, and my middle school went a couple times, and like if I didn't go, I just went to go. But yeah, that's the thing. It's the typical high school band director is obese, has a horrible relationship with his wife, on the verge of divorce, is an alcoholic, and after they're done with their stuff, they all go to the bar and drink their sorrows away.
Yeah, that was actually, I mean, not to throw anybody in the bus, that was literally my high school band director, and there was the person that I actually ended up replacing was just like that. And you know, I saw that future before me, and I'm like, I can't let that be me. I need to be the opposite of that. I need to be like an example and like the pinnacle of health for the kids in front of me. And so, if anything, that was a motivator for me to go the other direction.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I saw that firsthand, and I can't. We have to change that in the band world. The band world has a really, I hinted at this earlier. We have a terrible relationship with health and fitness, where the kids that get picked last in gym class are usually the kids that get picked on, and then like we live out that whole thing. You know, you go back and teach in the band world. You know, a lot of people that are coaches and stuff still live out that whole like, you know, popularity pecking order from high school. You live it again as a faculty member, and I turned that on its head at my school. I walked in and I had the best physique out of almost everybody on the faculty. I was way better shape and way more disciplined with my life than most of the people that coach football at our town. And we have a really elite football program in Avon. So outside of the guys that run the strength and conditioning program, like, yeah, everybody knew I was way fitter. And so like those guys gave us the respect that it translated into our kids got more respect. Right?
Yeah.
If the person in charge of the band isn't doing those things to make inroads with those communities, you're always going to feel that way and feel like you're the ostracized, picked on community, like the band nerds or whatever. And I wanted to turn that on its head, and we did that at just in my school, but that's got to happen everywhere. And that's sort of a big core as to why I felt so strongly about doing what I'm doing now.
So let's go back to why band directors are found at bars and miserable. Yeah. Why do you think that is?
Number of reasons. I think they realize that they haven't taken the time to form any identity outside. And you hinted at it earlier, any identity outside of being a band director. You know, they form this like hero complex for the kids in front of them, in a lot of cases without actually doing the things it takes to be that hero. And you know, when you clock out, which rarely happens apparently, as we just talked about, when you actually finally clock out and you're going and drinking, you're not being the hero. And you know that at your core. And so like there's this vicious cycle that I think a lot of them get into. Actually, I was even in that cycle 2 years ago. Even though I was a lot fitter, it was my birthday at the state convention. It was 2022. And I drank myself silly 2 years ago. And that was the last time I actually got drunk. Was then. I was like, wait a minute. This is not who I want to be. But I think that's part of the vicious cycle. And I think if you never form an identity outside of your job, then yeah, I mean, that can be pretty miserable, because then you're not experiencing personal growth. You're just the job.
Yeah, a lot of those conventions and festivals were massive motivators for me to leave the profession. It was seeing those people and saying, this is not going to be me.
Yeah.
Just sitting in these classrooms by themselves, just miserable. Only talking about counting their days till the pension comes, or reliving past titles won. Never talking about their wife, their kids, what's going on outside. It's just,
and I think the hustle culture, the hustle culture around getting trophies and stuff like that, that's very superficial. And you hinted at that earlier, like that's sort of like competing against one another for like the trophies and all that. And my band played this literature versus this literature. Like I stopped caring about that so much. Like after COVID, like that again, like not only did my philosophy on life change when I actually found like, oh man, I'm so healthy and I feel so good now. My prioritization of what I was doing with the kids changed completely. I prioritized way more like If the kids just flat out hated playing a piece, I just pulled it. Like if I knew, especially my top group, and I had a lot of really savvy musicians. I had a bunch of kids now that are music education majors and or kids that could have been music performance majors that I think smartly just went into engineering instead. But if those kids hated that, I was like, I'm not going to sacrifice my relationship and the human experience with these kids just to play a piece of music that I feel I need to play to stroke my ego. I also stopped going to the state competition level with our concert bands because I saw what it was doing to our kids. It was burning them out. They hated playing the same music again. And so my priorities were play music because it's fun. And who cares if we get a 1? Like I stopped caring about that altogether. And that's very against the culture, I think, now.
Yeah, it is. There's a very uppity culture if you get into that world of grown men who tie their identity to the ratings that other grown men give them in high school band competitions. As crazy as that, if you're listening to this, you're not in this world at all. You're like, man, that sounds like the dumbest thing ever, and you'd be right. It is.
Turns out it is. Yeah.
Yeah, it is the dumbest thing ever. But this is the profession me and Aaron were in, and the one he's just left, and the one that I left a year ago, and all in exploring fitness now. So let's talk about your personal journey. In shape, out of shape, in shape. What was the motivator for you to get your shit back together?
Because I hit my lowest point with my physical health. I rebounded the other direction. So during when everything shut down, right, March 2020, I was still that band director that tied everything about my identity to the success of my program. And then when it was like becoming kind of a potential that band might just go away because everyone's scared of particulate matter in the air from instruments. Yeah. I mean, that really hit me hard. And so, we were all told to stay inside. We were told to not go outside and be active. We were told to, just stay away from everybody. And so I think I was even talking to a former student today that I'm helping him try out for the Ohio State band. And he was like, yeah, I remember watching you on Zoom, and I remember watching you blow up and take a different shape. And then I remember watching you go the other direction too. And I realized that at that low point of lows, I found a local CrossFit gym here, just down the street from my house. And I found a gentleman that changed my life. His name is Terry Warren, who is still somebody that I look to and lean on for advice and coaching in my life going forward. So I had that to start out with, and I was one of his first. He bought the gym. He bought our gym that I go to now that I coach in person as well. He bought that when gyms were also in that same kind of like influx, like, are people going to be allowed to go to gyms? And he bought it in like May of 2020, and there's him outside the bank with a mask on with the contract, and he took a picture of it, and I'm like, that's a big leap of faith. So I was like, this guy must have something. So I became like one of his first like nutrition clients. Mm-hmm. And when I started like shedding weight and started doing things I'd never done before within the span of months, I was like, this is so powerful. And I realized, like, why was I not pushing myself this hard before? Look at how much I've been missing out. But it's hard. You can't live with that kind of regret. And so when I realized the power of that, I walked back into our rehearsals, whatever rehearsals looked like in July of 2020, and the kids instantly saw there was a huge transformation with me. They're like, oh my God, dude, you look jacked. I'm like, thank you. Right. And I realized the power of that and how few of us in the profession value our health over band ratings, and how that culture is so toxic and just needs to change.
Yeah, and it's the same thing that you'll get it's the same logic of, I don't focus on my health and I don't have time to because I'm so dedicated to blank. And a guy will say, I'm so dedicated to my family, I don't have time to go to the gym. I'm too busy being a good father to work out. Or a band director will say, I don't have time to go to the gym, I'm too busy being a great band director. These are going to be your future clients. What are you going to say to a guy that has that bullshit excuse?
How many years of good teaching do you have left in you if you continue what you're doing? And are you even good teaching right now? Like, you have to ask yourself that. And do you actually feel good at your core? Only you can answer that for yourself. Do you actually feel in your core you're giving everything you can to the job? It's not about the amount of hours you give. I think you even said this in one of the group chats this morning to the guys that were talking about how to balance their sleep.
Yeah.
It's not about the amount of hours you give. It's the quality of the time you are able to give to other people that really makes life meaningful. So it's wonderful. You can tell yourself that you're throwing all this time at your program to make yourself feel good. But if you feel like shit the entire time, and it's clear because people know, people can tell that you're messed up in the head. People can tell you're depressed. People can tell you're not happy. My own students could tell that there was something wrong with me this last year because I knew that I was going to have to probably leave. They knew in the fall something was wrong, right? People know. And you can't lie to yourself. And you can't teach band. I think we came up with this in one of our sessions. You can't teach band from a hospital bed.
Yes.
You're going for a heart attack. You're going to go for liver failure. You can't teach band from a hospital bed. But you could be like somebody like H. Robert Reynolds, who he's almost 90. I actually got to meet the man. He was in his 80s. He was still conducting beautifully. He came when I was in grad school, he came and conducted. Of course, like my legs were shaking when he said, "Hello, Aaron," and he knew my name. I was like, holy shit, this is like the best conductor ever. But that guy, as old as he is, like clearly taking care of himself and still knows his stuff. His mind was so sharp and conducted so well. He conducted us on his arrangement of O Magnum Mysterium. I'll never forget that. And that's clearly a guy that like he can love what he does late into his life. That's not a person who's going out and binge drinking and spending hours and hours and hours. He's doing it out of the love of what he does. And if someone that's the best in the field does it that way, we should all be following that path.
So what are band directors doing? Or we're saying band directors, but this can be if you're any guy who has any job where you find yourself giving yourself these excuses. This applies to you. If you're saying I don't have time to work out, or blank, I can't do this, I can't track my nutrition. What are these people doing, say band directors specifically, to make themselves have zero time to do the things they need to do to have self-development? Or what are their habits that are keeping them stuck from living a healthy life?
Well, I mean, how much money are you spending on fast food? How much money are you spending on DoorDash? Right? There's like an investment cost opportunity thing, right? Like people have these habits out of convenience that they convince themselves are saving them time, but they're just killing their health. And I've even been on this. I know my cousin doesn't listen to podcasts. My cousin lives with me. He eats entirely DoorDash. Okay, and he lives with me, and that kills me. I'm trying to be on him about eating better, but like people convince themselves that their investment in their habits, that they'll tell themselves any lie that they can to make themselves feel better, and to convince themselves that their current status quo is the way to go, because change is hard. Change is difficult for anybody, and being comfortable. I think, especially in the modern world, people are very easily able to seek comfort. And if you have a highly stressful job, the ability to seek comfort and gain that from a multitude of sources, whether that's the convenience of food, whether that's alcohol, it's very easy in the first world to do that and to fall into that pattern, as opposed to doing the thing that's maybe it's certainly more difficult in the short term, but it makes your life a hell of a lot easier in the long term.
Is a band director a stressful job?
Yes.
Why?
Because you are dealing with a myriad of people and personalities all the time, and because you really can't turn work off, because if there's an event coming up, you've got to answer your email, and people will have last minute questions. You always have to worry about whether or not people are going to show up to things. I mean, that's the thing I'm going to miss the least actually about the job, is worrying about people showing up to things and the amount of commitment, right? And so that stress there, you have to plan everything around all these contingency plans, and then the stress of you could do everything right as the band director, and then if you have a certain amount of people just not show up and kids are flaky, you're screwed.
And once again, if this performance is a high-stakes performance to you, and your identity is tied to this, then it's going to bother you a lot. And also, for a lot of schools, the performance of their band has a massive impact on just the effect of the school district and marketing.
It does. I mean, very few parts of the school in any band program are going to go travel super far. Most of the time when you come to sports, unless you're going super far into the state competition, a lot of times, like your outreach, and certainly at Avon, like we were the only group that was going out to like Grand Nationals in Indianapolis. I mean, that's a pretty big reach, right?
Whenever you started to get more disciplined, how did this affect your job, your experience at your job?
My experience in my job, even though, yes, I realized it was time for me to leave, I got so much better from the podium.
Okay.
I mean, it is night and day. Like especially the last couple years, when I really got nutrition out of it, and when I completely cut out alcohol, my mind from the podium, I could hear everything going on with every band. It was almost to the point of like information overload with how many things I felt like I could clinic and fix all at once. And so
the actual
really,
technique got better because you cut out all the bullshit.
absolutely, yeah. Like my mind being clear, and then, but even through all that noise, because I could hear so much more stuff that I was like, okay, I got to fix that. I got to fix that. That's out of balance. That's out of tune. Like I was so much quicker with all of that. I also got better at prioritizing and filtering all that information in the moment. And I never hesitated. That was such a big thing for myself in my career, was to strive to be amazing at pacing. Like the second I cut off, I pause, wait for everyone to have my attention, and then knowing exactly what you're going to say right away and getting like 10, 15 seconds later, right back to playing. And I got very good at that by the end. And I would attribute a lot of that improvement in my pacing and ability to assess the kids and diagnose the problems in the order of severity that they needed to be addressed in, almost entirely to my discipline with my health.
That's an amazing skill set that band directors and teachers have that they don't appreciate, that many, many companies, or if with their own business, they could utilize effectively, especially in the coaching world, because you are still teaching. You're teaching men to radically transform their lives now.
Yes.
So that ability to master your thoughts and prioritize problems and mentally plan ahead before it happens is huge, and I think just really, really underappreciated.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about your students now. So you started to get disciplined. They noticed that you made a transformation. What was the change in them? Did you notice any change?
Yeah, I did. So I felt like I had a much more just open and close relationship with a lot of the kids that wanted that from me. And not that that was ever something, not that I was ever shut off from them, but just when I was so much more self-assured in my own skin, I was able to open up and give those kids even more of myself. And I would even go so far as to say there are some students now currently in the band that are actually really strong. I have a couple of kids in the saxophone section, particularly that I'm thinking of. Shout out saxophones, that's you. That are like, they've gotten very strong. I have a couple of kids that probably weigh. I'm like 160 some right now. They probably weigh about as much as me, and they can rep 225 on bench. And they're like 16, 17, and they did that all within the span of a year. And will I say that like it was entirely me that did that for them? No, but like they had another person in their life that they knew cared about them, that was doing the things that opened up that path for them in a more obvious way. Like, oh, well, if he's doing it, why can't I do it? And we tend to have that underserved population of kids. And I always joke, like, and I don't have a problem with this, but like we have the kids that are like, they play D&D. Like they're all the kids that like they'll play all the video games. I joke that I think like the esports team at Avon is like literally over half was like band kids. Like and they were good. Like they went to the state for Smash Brothers and all that. And so like I mean they're good, but that's tends to be a population that doesn't like to engage with really healthy behaviors too. You could do both those things. And so when you show kids the way, and you live it and you genuinely love what you're doing and you genuinely are happy with yourself. I mean, kids these days, especially with the amount of unhealthy temptations out there that they can see at any time on a screen, man, that need for adults to be just that much stronger is just that much more important these days.
Yeah, and a band director is a different kind of teacher because they spend so much time with their students. If you were a 7th grade math teacher, you'd see your group of kids for 40 minutes once a day. You're a band director. You're seeing these kids 3 hours a day in rehearsals. Then if you're at band camp, it could be 8 hours, 24/7. So you become a role model. You become a role model to them. You become somebody who they look up to. So what responsibility does a band director have to not just teach music, but to teach a way to live?
I mean, those kids are growing up with you, right? If you teach in even a moderately large or even smaller school district, you might be the only person for that entire district. So you're going to see the same kids grades 5 through 12 sometimes. So you are watching these kids grow up right in front of you. And even more so, like you'll come across kids that don't have the support at home that they need. And like you might end up being, especially if you're an adult that's in their life for 8 years and during that really turbulent formative period of adolescence, like you might be the only parental father figure or mother figure in a kid's life. And if you're exhibiting behaviors that are going to feed into things that are already a detriment to that kid's life, because they're getting it at home and they see you doing the same things, then you're not really, I don't think you're doing the job.
For the band director who, preaches how much time they spend and who really invests everything into the kids, which to a point is good. Like, I'm not saying if you invest everything into the kids, that's bad. I'm saying if you overdo it, if you're there too much, if you're seeing your students more than your family, and I know some band directors, some teachers who would tell their students that they were their real family, and that stuff like that. So what is the dangers of that model to kids?
Well, it just goes to show you that, I mean, we already talked about it earlier, that you are tied up in your identity as that's your only identity, right? And there's nothing else out there, right? And then this is always an issue I think I had with, to a certain extent, with like certain coaches, right? Mm-hmm. Like you push a kid so hard that they never learn how to do something right for themselves, right? You are so on that kid's ass to like, okay, well, you got all these lifting sessions. Like, I think to a certain extent, our football program does this. And I've watched kids go to the next level and completely flake out because they don't have anybody behind them pushing them and yelling at them. And it's just that nonstop. And if you never develop that for yourself, then, I mean, you leave that confines of that, then that kid never develops that independence and that self-reliance to self-actuate those behaviors that are actually going to lead to a healthy life.
So you got in shape, you got disciplined, you noticed your kids started to do it as well. Mm-hmm. Do you think that if you didn't do that, or for a different band director who's demonstrating sloppy, undisciplined behaviors, do you think there's a noticeable difference in the actions of those kids? Yes,
I think so. And for me, it was just about just the general way kids carry themselves. And I got a couple of kids that would say that, like, yeah, the arts kids actually here at our school, we kind of take over. And I was like, yeah, we do. So I think there's a certain confidence and air of confidence that comes with that, especially with just the general culture in America and how we put football up on this pedestal up here and bands down here. I came across a reel on Instagram where there was a comment section where it was a college game and this coach is moving, kickers sometimes can be real assholes. Like when a marching band's doing a show and they want to like practice their kicks. Like, so it was a reel of a coach moving this football player off there. And like the whole comment section, I saved the reel just so I can go back and like, I can make a comment about it. Was like, oh, who does this band director think he is? The football team's most important. Everybody's there for that. Who cares about the band? Like, it was just comment after comment of that. It's like, well, we've got to change that. And I think that in the places where the band director's leading the way for being a strong leader and exhibiting the behaviors that does that, the kids have that strength to lean on and carry themselves differently and walk with a sense of confidence and not feel like they have to, walk through the halls all scared and dodging, whatever. And yeah.
Yeah, I remember a time when the kickers were kicking and they kicked the ball. It came flying down towards the band and just snapped this kid's trombone in half. Funny. Just landed right on his slide, snapped it in half.
Oh, no.
So whenever you were getting disciplined, you were thinking about quitting. How did you interact with peers, other teachers? Did you notice, and as you were changing, as you were living differently than they were, did you notice any difference in their interactions with you?
Yeah, and I think I came across a really awesome reel from Chris Williamson. Do you know Chris? Mm-hmm. You know of him? Yeah, and it was right at a time where, I'm, as you know, starting your own program, going out on your own takes a lot of guts, takes a lot of gumption. And he spoke to, there's going to be a time where if you're really going from a place of where you are to where you want to be, you're going to feel alone for a little bit. And I was like, damn, I got this reel at exactly the right time because I'm feeling this right now. And I will say there's definitely a bit of isolation. I mean, when I tell people like I'm creating a fitness program for band directors and like I'm calling it Rebel Fitness, like a lot of people are very confused a lot of people are very confused about what that is and like how that works, and like nobody understands like, oh, are you training people in person? Like, no, this is not how this works. Like they have no concept of it. And so there's definitely an isolating feeling. So I mean, this is not all roses. Like I do feel like a bit of a lone wolf sometimes doing this, because there's not enough of us that have done this job or do this job that actually live in a way that allows us to be healthy leaders of families and of band kids.
Did you have any judgment from anyone? Did anyone's relationship change with you?
I would say, if anything, like there was definitely more respect from colleagues that were not music colleagues. That was an interesting change and an interesting shift. I developed, especially in the last few years, I developed a really close relationship with our athletic director. I love our athletic director, At Avon. He's just a fantastic person, and we only got closer as I became more disciplined. So yeah, my social relationships with certain people changed. There were some people that talked to me less and were a little bit more uncomfortable around me. And even the topic of like fitness and being around some of the music teachers, like flat out, I just don't think that they want to talk to me about it. Like my music colleagues, just if that ever comes up, they just kind of laugh like, oh yeah, well Aaron's all ripped or whatever. Like, I mean, they'll laugh it off.
Yes.
Because it's like a way that they can deflect away from the things that they know that they're not doing. And
yeah,
so,
I was going to ask you, as my next question is, why do you think they brush it off?
It's a way of deflection, because very rarely do you see an example of someone who looks like this but also does that job. And so every time you come to work, you're forced to look in the mirror, basically. I mean, as a teacher, where I taught at the school that I went to as a high school student, the orchestra director, a very close friend of mine, was my teacher in high school. The assistant band director was my teacher in high school. That was my assistant. So like those relationships being that close, it was just something that became something that was not talked about very much. They've never asked me for advice, and I don't give unsolicited advice either, because if you want to make the change, like you have to believe that it's something you want to do. So I knew that just from like a sales standpoint, even before I was actually going to do a program like this, I knew I couldn't sell them on anything, because they didn't want to change their behaviors. So it definitely made me feel more isolated from them.
No, I experienced the same thing. You can tell the way a lot of people's insides get revealed whenever you start to improve your life.
Yeah.
Because especially in the music teacher community, there's some people who will root you on and become your best cheerleader, and there's other people who will never talk to you again.
You know what's really funny about some people that will root you on, who actually is rooting me on a lot right now while I'm doing this, is the band director from our rival school. He's actually a good friend of mine, and he was a friend of mine before he moved to the rival school of Avon. But he and I are really close, and so when I told him what I was doing, he was like, "Oh, that's so awesome! You got to come work with my band too. Like, you go, Aaron." Like, he is very all about it. And is he super fit? Not necessarily, but he's been one of my biggest cheerleaders. So I got to shout out Josh. He's an awesome guy. So you're right. People's character is revealed.
Let's talk about the mindset of teachers. Okay,
Yeah.
Because some teachers listen to this, and if you're not a teacher, and you might be able to find some common ground here as well, just because you can work at a certain place and a bubble starts to form around you. Like I know whenever I first started thinking about leaving my job, and I tried various things. It took me 5-6 years to leave my job, because I started in the ad agency first, and then I started Rising Father. So it was a journey and a process. But as you start to think about leaving and talk to people about it, there's some people who want to do it themselves and are too scared, and there's other people who think that it's impossible to leave but would want to. I know that's a very common teacher mindset thing I ran into, was this job is the best I'm ever going to get. I'm so grateful to have it, grateful to have your job, but school districts overdo it. Like I know people that long-term sub for 6-7 years at a school district and apply for a job, and then they get turned down, and it's like, no, for a $30,000 a year salary. So some teachers just believe that, in my experience, there's nothing else out there, and they would just fail if they tried anything else. Like, talk to me about the mindset of thinking about leaving teaching and starting your own thing, what you saw in other teachers.
Oh, we talked about this in one of our sessions, actually, and this came up where after I made the announcement, it's one of two things, I think. that I got. I mean, obviously I got the kind of confused, like, well, what exactly are you doing? What is this? You're coaching people and I don't get it. And there was also like grabbing my arm, take me with you.
Yes.
Yes, there was a lot of that, especially at our middle school. A lot of our middle school teachers, and actually the middle school probably had some of the oldest faculty that we had there, and a lot of them were my teachers when I went to the school district. Mm-hmm. And so there was definitely a great healthy mixture of, man, you have so much courage for doing that. And you're right. There was definitely the mixture of, I feel like I can never do that.
Yeah.
And like, I wish I had the courage to do that. It's like, well, it's not about having yes, it is about having the courage to do it. But what kind of habits have you built as a person that would allow you to have the strength to make such a move? Are you buying
well said.
That's the thing. It's like, are you buying like the nicest car and spending your money on a car? And this is another thing that came up in our sessions. I've never had a car payment in my life. I buy the cheapest car that I can, and I drive it till it dies. And then I buy another cheap car. I just vow to never have a car payment. And so financially, I've just always taken care of myself on that front. So I have flexibility with my time in my life. I never wanted to spend in a way my money so that the school could control me or that somebody else could control me when it came down to it. And as a result, I had some discipline habits from a money standpoint, even when I was unhealthy physically. Then when you add in the other discipline habits on top of that, then you have a person that's capable of trying such a bold move as this. And most people don't have those habits. They just think, oh, well, if I just have a good idea and I can just make this, it's no. There's a reason why most entrepreneurs are also really in shape.
Yes. That's a whole nother podcast right there. And that's just a beautiful Jim Rohn quote. He says, you will achieve what you become, or some version of that. Like, the results you want in life will be in direct correspondence with the man that you become and your habits and your disciplines. You can want to quit your job all you want in life, but if you can't get your butt out of bed in the morning, if you can't eat healthy, if you can't get yourself to the gym, if you're unorganized, you're not going to be able to run a business. You're not going to be able to be successful anywhere else.
Yeah, you can only manage one thing effectively, and that's your band. And even then, that's questionable. You're not ready to do what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So was it scary whenever you quit your job?
Oh, it still is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing. But it gives you a sense of urgency. And until you put yourself in a situation and you just pull the trigger and go for it, you're never going to grow. I think that was the biggest thing that I felt the last couple of years in my job was I felt a lack of growth. Right, yeah. I had gotten a hold of my health and my fitness. I was disciplined with my nutrition. I'd given up alcohol, but there was still like a spiritual growth and like intellectual growth that I just felt like was missing, and I wasn't being challenged enough on that front. And so I think that was really what also pushed me over the edge. And I just knew that I was going to have to take a big leap to do it. And you can't grow unless you put yourself in the situation to grow.
There's a lot of teacher guilt out there. Do you feel any teacher guilt?
That too. No longer. And I guess I'm lucky in that regard. I'm sure that a lot of teachers would feel that way leaving the profession early, and that's sort of the trend now is a lot of people are leaving the profession early, and if they don't, they will cite that teacher guilt. And I have seen that, but I actually don't feel that because of where the program got to in 10 years and the way we were able to kind of close the chapter on everything. It felt like a complete experience in 10 years for me. And that's my personal experience. I'm kind of lucky in that regard. I left on very positive terms with a lot of the people. I left on very positive terms with my principal. I know that was maybe not your experience. I'm still thinking back to the video you put together for your presentation when you went down to Cabo. And that video of you pulling out of the school, like,
yeah.
When I walked out, I gave my principal walked me out. She actually helped kind of save my life when I was actually. Should we talk about the dip in mental health? I don't think I got to that.
Yeah, we'll get it. We can get into that.
Okay,
let's talk about that next. No, gotcha. I got along with my principal. I did get along with, and he wished me well. I think he's trying to start his own thing actually.
Really?
Yeah, because he's starting to build his own personal brand actually.
Nice.
Yeah, he was super. Wished me well, and there is. I went through the same thing. Is that those last couple days, there were tons of teachers who came up and said like, oh my God, if I only could do what you're doing, I would be out of here 10 years ago. And then there's like so many teachers wanted to leave, and then lots of teachers said, I only quote unquote have 10, 15 years left, and then I could be on the top teacher step, or then I get to retire. It's like, yeah, then you're basically dead. You only have 10, 15 years left until you're 55, 60, and then you have 20 years left, maybe. And then there's people who realized that I was leaving, and this was gratefully was the far minority. There was like a couple people who I thought I was closer with than I was, and then whenever they found out that I was quitting, starting my own business, vastly surpassing my teacher salary, just never talked to me again. But the vast majority wished me well, and said basically they wish they could leave also.
Yes, that was sort of my experience too. Yeah.
So we were talking about teacher guilt, and you was talking about how lack of progress was one of the reasons why you wanted to leave. Yeah, I can relate to that, because I did feel like I was successful at my job as middle school band director. Yeah, my band played amazing, great. Now what? And for me personally, I needed more than that. It's like I felt like I was dying on the inside. I felt like I did great this job, and then what else is there for me? Like, I know there's something else out there for me. I can make a bigger impact. I can make more money. I can do things for my family more. Like I want to have a podcast. I want to write books. I want to become more. And I did feel like the profession I was in was just holding me stuck in a cage.
Yep, that's how I felt. So much so that after 10 years, I reached probably my lowest mental health point I've been in my life this last fall. And that's when I knew I had to make a change. That when you delay your own progress for that long, it catches up with you eventually. And that's when I knew, okay, forget the money, forget the retirement, forget the whatever. Do the thing and work towards who you are meant to be. Work towards your full potential. Put yourself in the situation you need to. Take the risk, take the leap, and see what happens. Because if you don't, you're staying in the cage. In that cage, I felt so trapped in my own mind this last fall. Every day I was driving to school, I was fighting to not drive my car off the road and end everything. And after 10 years of keeping myself in a cage, I realized that no more. I have more to give. I cannot be limited by my current surroundings and what people expect me to do. Especially when you're like the golden boy kid that was like the superstar of the band program that you now are in charge of. That's a whole nother level of connection that I think not a lot of band directors get. Like when you went to that school, you were hired by that principal that was your principal when you were a kid to come back and reinvigorate the program and save it. And then you do that. Like, there's another level of commitment and expectation that comes along with that for me personally that I think even goes on top of just the regular band director thing. So that point was when I worked through some of that, as you referred to, teacher guilt, was in the fall. That's when I felt like I was giving up on other people, even though I knew I couldn't do it anymore.
I mean, you mentioned driving to school and having some really traumatic feelings. Like what caused that all? Was it only not being able to live up to your potential, or was it something else?
I think that was just it. It was realizing that I was trapped in my life and feeling stuck, feeling like I had something else. I always knew I had something else out there that I needed to be doing to make the world a better place. And then I just was not taking action on it. And I was getting so comfortable with my life that comfort sometimes doesn't result in comfort if it's too long.
Isn't the goal comfort, though, Aaron?
I don't know. I should go revisit the workout I did today. I didn't feel very comfortable.
A lot of people would say the goal of life and of getting a job is so you can retire and be comfortable. Does that bring happiness, or does that bring misery, or does that bring happiness?
I think comfort brings misery. Too much comfort brings misery. There's certain comforting things like knowing that you are doing everything to take care of your family and helping others. That's a comfort that I'm willing to seek. Knowing that you're giving everything you can to the world, that to me feels like a comfort. And knowing that you're doing everything you can to be the truest potential of yourself. That to me is a comfort that I think is worth seeking. But you have to do a lot of what most people think as uncomfortable things to get there.
So let's talk about your prime demographic here, band directors.
Yeah.
What are the problems they have that you are going to solve?
Well, they definitely need accountability. And a lot of times when you get so stuck in your own head and stuck in your own world, and all you're dealing with is those kids in front of you, you don't step back and even take the time to think about what you should be doing for yourself in your own health. And so it's really accountability. And when it comes to a community that can hold you accountable, which I love about Rising Father, and it's all positive vibes in there. And band directors, you go to these forums, there's no way anybody's talking about health and fitness and forums.
Yeah.
And certainly in like the main, I'm thinking of the main like band directors Facebook page now, everybody just posts anonymously now. It's so toxic that no beginner can even ask a question about how to even something as simple as like, how do I tune my clarinet section? People will just rake you over the coals and ridicule you for that. And then when it comes to like actually trying to make a change with your health and fitness, you ask something that's even more deeply personal with something you're trying to fix. In that kind of environment, how in the hell are you expected to like make a change for yourself? You're just gonna get so much hate and so much ridicule for doing that. So that same positive energy that is in Rising Father, band directors need that, and they need their own space where they can rely on each other and talk in a way that also picks each other up when it comes to doing hard things like changing their diet, working out, but also simultaneously dealing with the issues that come with being a band director. How to deal with all the random angry parents, how to deal with a kid that doesn't get a leadership position that thinks they should get it and they have entitlement mentality. Like working through all those things together as a community in a positive, uplifting way, the way Rising Father does, is absolutely needed, and we just don't have it right now.
Yeah, why? What's the thing about the profession that makes that toxic overlaying vibration in a Facebook group, and when you go to the festivals, and just the judgment and opinionated and identity tied to achievement? What is it?
It's because they don't have anything else going for themselves. They've never thought about having anything else go for themselves. Here, I'll even give you this. This was I talked about this on my podcast. There's a very, very widely respected band director in Ohio that I will not name this person's name, retired now, but ran arguably the best band program in the state for probably multiple decades. He had a student teacher that I went to school with at OSU, and he mentioned to the student teacher, he said, years ago, I realized I had the choice between my family and my band program, and I chose wrong.
Ooh.
And of course he chose his band program. Ooh. And this is a name that if I said it in Ohio, everybody knows this person's name and they know the school. And to me, that is the core of where those issues are. Yeah. Everybody's trying to be like that, right? I want the best looking band program. We played this literature, and everything gets tied up in that. And so then it becomes a pecking order, and people need to tear each other down in subtle ways and be passive aggressive. There's so much passive aggressive in music education with people because they've just never had anything else, and they've never learned how to deal with really being competitive with themselves. If you spend time in the gym, you're competing with yourself if you're doing it right. And people that have never learned how to do that and deal with that kind of adversity have the need to externalize that toward other people.
Yeah, and if you're someone who's used to making weak decisions and sitting in a practice room for 10 hours playing your clarinet, you don't have the social skills, you don't have the emotional maturity to be an entrepreneur, to have these hard conversations, and to drop your ego and identity and actually dig in. That's what it is, a lot of it. You just think back to your music school. Some of those people became music teachers, some of them did not. A lot of them are working at Wendy's right now. But I remember being at college, and there was the same thing. It's just in that whole culture, the whole group is passive aggressive. I'm first chair, you're second chair. I got to solo, you didn't get to solo. It's just your entire life and identity is tied up into achievement on this little thing that doesn't fucking matter.
No.
And you forget about who you are as a person. Who are you becoming as a person? That's the thing that matters.
That's been the best part about this entrepreneurial journey, is rediscovering Aaron Jacobs, the person. Yeah. Doing the reading, spending time learning and just having the time to think. It's wild. It's like the last 2 months I've realized how numb I was to everything, which is so bad as a musician because you're supposed to express the music, but I'm actually watching movie moments with my mom and dad and like actually crying at stuff that you're supposed to like shed a tear at, or like I'm genuinely like belly laughing at things that are actually funny again. Like I'm watching, you probably can't watch this show because you have younger kids, but The Boys on Amazon.
That's too graphic for me.
It is.
I had to turn it off. It got too
That's fair.
gross for me.
But there's definitely some moments in there where even if they're not as graphically, there's some genuinely really funny things. And I'm laughing out loud again. And I'm like, I can't remember the last time I laughed out loud genuinely like that and really felt it at my core. And like, I'm rediscovering myself as a person.
Yeah.
By having the courage to do this. And if nothing else comes from this other than we change some people's lives and we have a few more band directors out there that end up being healthier for themselves, their family, and the band kids, I've taken the time to rediscover Aaron Jacobs, the person, and what really matters to me. And I've already won. Like, regardless of whatever money I make, who cares? Like, I've already won a huge battle, and that is having the courage to take the first step. And I'm rediscovering me, the person, and it feels great.
Yeah, I mean, by jumping off the cliff, you found yourself.
Yeah.
You know, you quit, messaged me, invested, coached, got coached up, started building your thing.
Gonna invest again in about a month or so. Once I get I will say I have a few things like with LLC and yada yada that I want to get some more things in place. But yeah, we're gonna be doing another probably 6 months together, right?
But through jumping, you feel more free. Which, like, and guys, I understand if you're, and ladies too, if you're listening to this and you're in a 9-to-5, and it's okay if you love your job. Like my wife loves her teaching job. Great. Anyone would be happy to have and be blessed to have my wife as their elementary general music teacher, and you need teachers like that. But other people feel stuck in their 9-to-5. I felt stuck. You felt stuck. I felt like I was bashing my head up against the ceiling, and I needed that to bust open so I could become the person I was. But if that is you, you feel the comfort and security of your pension, of your benefits, of the salary. You feel like that is who you are. You feel like that safety feels good. Like this comfort, this complacency, this security makes me me. But no, Aaron is saying that after he threw all that away, he was able to find himself, like free falling in the fear and the scale. Like he has no guaranteed income right now, but he feels free.
Oh yeah.
I had the exact same thing. Like, you know, I'm a completely different person than I was a year ago, and especially 2 years ago, because throughout my job I was becoming the man I was supposed to be, and people could tell as I was at school, like, man, you're different. My wife says you're completely. When I see teachers, they're like, you are completely different. Yeah, I found myself through quitting and through fear, by taking risks, by investing in myself, and by taking risks and jumping off the cliff. It's beautiful.
It is. Scary, but beautiful.
Scary and beautiful. But the real scary thing is not having fear, is just sitting on a couch plugged in and into safety and security. That's more scary to me.
Yes. A lot of the habits I used to have even months ago when it would come to like trying to unwind and have downtime, even though, yes, I was smart with food choices. Yes, I wasn't drinking alcohol. Yes, I was disciplined and I went to the gym a lot. I find that those things no longer give me satisfaction. I just want to work on content and try to make this thing go, you know, like just organically. I don't have to force myself to do it. I want to do it.
No, I found the exact same thing. Last night we went to a concert.
Yeah, I saw that. It was Train, right?
Train, which plays like 100 hits apparently. I didn't know that all these amazing songs were from Train. And it didn't start. There's opening band didn't start for an hour and a half, and then Train didn't. So I was freaking tired and laying on the ground, basically asleep for part of it. But still, hours into it, I was like, I just want to go home and work on my business. Like, I was like, I want to write some emails. Like, I want to reach out to people. I want to make some content. I was like, I'm ready to be done with this. I don't want to go home and drink and watch TV. Like, I want to do some things. I went to bed and went to sleep because it was very late for me. But yeah, that's a beautiful place to be in, where you're pulled to work on your job instead of it being August 1st and you're like counting down the days until you have to go back to work.
Yeah. Oh, I will not miss that pit in my stomach. I mean, even when I went on vacation with my mom and dad, it was a vacation we'd been planning for years. As much as my mom was really sad that, like, she loved being the band director's mom. She loved that. They could see a change in me when we were on vacation. Like, I was genuinely at peace. Mm-hmm. Even with no guaranteed income. Even my dad's like, you know what? Whatever happens, I know you'll be fine no matter what.
Yeah.
He's like, no matter what happens, you've developed yourself. You're going to be fine no matter what. So they've even come to terms with it. And as an only child, like, it's a different kind of situation. Like, you're one of many, right?
Oh yeah. 8 brothers and sisters.
Yeah. Yeah. We're definitely on the opposite ends of the spectrum on that.
Yeah. Because if you've developed habits to build yourself as a man, it doesn't matter what situation you're dropped into. Because your identity and who you are is the things that you do. Like, if you can wake up on time, if you can eat healthily, if you can be organized and disciplined, you can survive in any situation life throws at you.
Exactly.
And that builds an internal confidence that will take you into any situation in life. However, if your entire identity is tied to your job and you throw 110% at your band's contest performance, and then you go home and you're a horrible husband, horrible father, you're drinking, have no habits, you live your life sloppily. If you lose that job, who are you? You're just slop. You're nothing. You will fail. Yeah. So you have to build yourself.
Yeah, there's no feeling in the world like it when you build yourself. Money aside, your health goes with you no matter what. Your health is the thing that's you have the most control over that, more than your band's performance, more than a kid showing up to another gig, more than some random thing that the state's going to throw at you. A lot of my colleagues, by the way, in Ohio now, they're having to do this weird training for like reading or something. Like, you're going to get stuff like that thrown at you. Like, that's all out of your control. But what's in your control is what goes in here and what goes in here and what you do with this. Yeah. You have way more control over that. And once you do take control over those 3 things, you kind of feel unstoppable.
So let's talk about your program a little bit. What's it called?
So Rebel Fitness for Band Directors.
Okay. And what are you going to do for these band directors?
Well, I mean, let's start with the title, because the title, I think, can come across a little cheesy. But the reason I'm calling it that is a couple reasons. Is I want to rebel against American culture's perception of the band world. It's like this weak, nerdy, whatever. I'm rebelling against that. We're also going to rebel against the natural inclination of most band directors to be, as we've talked about, assholes to one another who just care about band ratings. It's like, we're going to rebel against the workaholic culture that makes people into that asshole. We're going to become a better we're going to become a better colleague group to one another, and that's going to filter out into all of our students and transform the way an underserved population deals with wellness. Anymore, like, I know in our state, I don't know about Pennsylvania, but in our state, we are programming less and less physical fitness into the school day. It's really disturbing. It's more reading time. It's more time to prepare for tests, more of that.
Well, it's all to get ready for the state testing.
Yeah. I mean, that's apparently tests are all that matters. It's stupid. And speaking of things that kids will tie to their identity, it's kind of the same thing. Kids will feel that way with their identity as those damn tests, right? It's just, it shouldn't be that way. Anyways, so we need to build a community that I think allows people to develop into what we've talked about. And so we're rebelling against that natural culture that's out there. And if the schools aren't going to do it for us, and you have the same kids and you're charged for many years, when it comes to fighting how unhealthy America is, we have to take charge of that as the leaders of kids in schools. If it's not going to be built into the school day, if we don't have the time for it, if you teach marching band, you teach a sport. You have that responsibility now on you to where you can transform a kid's life and set them on a path to health and wellness, but you got to do it yourself. So my program is going to just ask for these guys. I mean, you have more time than you think, but on the surface, at minimum, commit 6 hours a week. It's 4 workouts a week, 2 hours at most to prepare your food. Everybody has 6 hours a week that they don't think they have. How much time are you spending on Netflix? How many times have you gone out to eat and spent how much money going out to eat and how much time that takes? Right? Everybody has more time than they think they do. So I'm in programming 4 hours a week. It's going to be a little different from Rising Father in that Rising Father definitely is a little bit more bodybuilding centric. And my program's a little bit more functional fitness centric / athletic training centric, because it's the kind of stuff that, I mean, it would be kind of funny to see all band kids become like bodybuilders that are, 250 pounds and can all bench 225 and try out for the NFL Combine. But I don't see very few bands moving well if you're that bulky. So I'm definitely more in like the athletic training and functional fitness space. So for me, I want to teach band directors to move in a way that's going to allow them to bring some of those skills very organically into their own marching band rehearsals, in terms of how to warm a group up physically, how to get them to be more fit. Just naturally, that's going to filter into how they run those rehearsals, and you're going to have a lot more healthy kids out of this process as well. But it has to start with the leader at the top.
So you're going to help band directors get in shape.
Yes.
Okay. And so we're going to help out of shape band directors get in shape. What else?
Well, and also change their relationship with their job. We've talked about it a lot today, where if you're going to commit 6 more hours a week to something that's not band, that means that you have to fight against that natural inclination to make everything about your job and make your identity about your job. You have to become more. Band directors need to become more if we want to be viewed as more in the general public, and not like, oh, band kids are the nerds. You want to actually fight that, you have to become more. So it's a lot deeper than just, okay, well, great, you look better, but are you actually healthier, and are you actually becoming the person that can change American culture, part of a community that's going to do that.
Mm-hmm. So is this tied to location, or can anyone reach out to you?
Anybody can do this. So, I mean, most of this is going to be anywhere in the U.S. I almost said continental United States, but there could be somebody that does marching. There are marching bands in Alaska, which is kind of wild to think about. I don't know how much you can practice in Alaska when it comes to marching band, but anywhere in the U.S. is going to kind of be my target demographic. There's tens and hundreds of thousands of band directors out there, and if I just even help just 10 people just get better, I would feel like it's a huge win.
Excellent. What have you grown this past year? What should people look out for you? Podcasts? What?
Yeah. So that's another thing that you helped me get going, which we've got down to a science now, is the podcast. I actually recorded my 7th podcast, and that'll go out next Thursday. So every Thursday, right around 10 o'clock, I release a new podcast episode. It's literally just my name, the Aaron Jacobs Podcast. I release it on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, iHeartRadio. It's all out there. I'm on Instagram. I post once or twice a day on Instagram just to give free value to anybody who needs it and wants it. It's Aaron W. Jacobs is my handle. And I recently, as much as my former students are going to laugh at me because I was very against using TikTok, but I did start a TikTok. And actually, organically, that resulted in something really good, because there was some band student from somewhere was like, can I send this page to my band director?
Beautiful.
And I was like, oh, I didn't think of that angle. So I don't know if you saw what I posted right before we went live, but I think students need to also make this connection. And so there's nobody in the band space doing what I'm doing. So Instagram, TikTok, and podcasting on Spotify and all the platforms.
Amazing. If you're listening to this and you're like, I got to contact this guy, what's the best way for them to contact you?
Best way to contact me would be follow me on Instagram and direct message me at Aaron W. Jacobs. It's probably the quickest way to get in touch with me is through Instagram DMs.
Excellent. Well, I know from being in the profession that, man, there's a massive, massive need for what you're doing. Not every band director has to quit their job, but they do need to live a life that kids can model.
Yes.
They need to see a healthy way to live. And as you said, a lot of kids that are in the band world don't have those healthy habits, and the last thing they need is another unhealthy habit to model.
Yes, and a lot of band kids, and just to a certain extent rightfully so, they form that same sort of attachment to their band director the way a lot of kids form with their coach.
Yeah.
You see the same coach for multiple years, you see the same band director for multiple years, and so for better or worse, like, you're imprinting behaviors onto those kids, because those kids, there are a lot of band directors, even if they are really unhealthy and they're in that toxic mindset of competing, unhealthily, they probably are also having some real positive influence on kids in other ways too, and so when you already have that going for you, why not do everything you can to be the most you can be for somebody else? There's no feeling like that in the world. I mean, I was so on fire my last couple of years. Whenever my lifting guys that in my band program would want to talk about anything in the gym, or we would go do a session like Friday afternoon before a game, they'd want to go lift. That was some of the most fun thing. That was the most fun things I got to do. I was just so on fire to help those guys.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Aaron. I know you're going to be wildly successful at this.
Thank you, Chris. Yeah, it's definitely nerve-wracking, but I think, like you said, this is something that I think the band world has needed for a while. And there's a few people that are kind of chipping away at it at the surface. We have things like Marching Health. We have a couple other people that are like musicians that are also coaches, but I don't know that anyone's really going to the core of the issue. And so we've got to get to the core of the issue and really, really tackle it head on.
Yeah, that's what you're going to do. Awesome, man.
Yes.
Thanks so much.
All right. Thank you, Chris. Take care.